All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Anthony. Welcome, welcome. This is going to be the Corda intro to accounts. So right now you're seeing me. I'm going to throw up some slides in a second. Let's see how many participants we have in here. We usually give like 1 or 2 minutes for a few late stragglers to come in. So I'll do that. Some of you might have known me from some other training sessions or webinars. I'll give myself a further introduction once more people join in. But while we wait, if everybody has some coworkers or others that are interested in this event, please pass out the link. There's still plenty of time to join in. This is accessible for all audiences for sure, and I will reiterate that later. But it is an intro to accounts. And when we get started, you'll see a lot of the basic fundamentals of how accounts were designed, etc. And then we're going to lead into some code. So I'm going to be covering many different layers. So it's definitely something that you can all, if you're interested in Corda, if you're new to Corda, can enjoy. So while we wait, we'll just give it a few more minutes. Yeah, tell your coworkers, tell your friends. Start slacking, start tweeting, go to Twitter, go to your internal channels, and I'm more than welcome to kind of address issues and attack this particular subset of Corda from any sort of angle that's interested to the audience. And I will also be sort of like taking questions along the way, etc. Let's see, what else can I say? I will not be rapping today, sorry, if that's what brought you into here, but I can release, like something or send you a link if anybody wants to see that later. Yeah, this is going to be a really fun time. I'm actually a substitute on this today. So I'm not the usual person running this webinar, but it will be good. And I will do my best to fill the amazing shoes of our regular dev evangelists. Still plenty of time. I'm going to drop a message in the pub Slack. If you haven't been there before, it's slack.corda.net. And I'm also going to start getting my content up here. Let's see if I can get my screen up with some slides. Share. Okay, so now I hope all of you are seeing maybe a small version of my face, maybe a big version of a slide presentation I've got for you today. But it's not just going to be slides. I'll keep it very interactive. I like to integrate material and have sort of different ways of understanding it, because my goal here is to have everybody remember as much as they can, to get excited about the project that they're working on, or sort of dream up new projects which could be taking form in their mind at a particular time or within your company. At the end of this session, hopefully we'll have a good sort of like platform and baseline for dialogue, for discussion, and for just kind of like moving forward as a community, because everybody here right now are innovators and part of the Corda community. Let's see. So slack.corda.net, if you've not signed up for that before, it's our Slack workspace. And there's a lot of devs that are always available, as well as teams from developer evangelism, also teams from, like ops, professional services, just a lot of great community support there. So I recommend you join in, and we will have office hours right after this session. This session will go about 55 more minutes, and then I'm going to jump into office hours and just attack anything else that is left over or that is lingering in your mind. So hold on, I'm just telling everybody to get into the session above. Okay, so if you see my eyes kind of wandering once in a while, I'm totally focused. I'm 100% with you. It's just that I've got a lot of screens going on. I've got a lot of data to process to give you the best experience possible. And there are some features that I want to point out related to the WebEx, the platform that we're using right now. So you have a global chat on the right or on your toolbar somewhere. I'm going to send out a message and say like, "Hi everyone, it's Anthony." Boom. And if everybody can see that, you can kind of ping that back and chat back. Just say like hello or how's it going, et cetera, just so that I know that you're kind of finding your way and becoming familiar with the interface. Don't see anybody there yet, but oh, nobody loves me. I'm totally fine. Kind of like going one way, but okay, I feel it's there. Yeah, it's just a great place to converse. Everybody can give their feedback or kind of interact real time. We also have a Q&A panel. There's a question and answer panel. We have some brilliant people from developer relations here as well. I'm just going to point out who's helping with this particular webinar. We've got Irina. She'll be answering questions both on Slack and on the Q&A panel in WebEx. We also have Chris Chabot from the team. He's brilliant, total mentor to me, and I think like he's waving to everybody there. So definitely, if you have any questions, hit him up there. And kind of like overarching, like putting it together technically, I wouldn't know what to do with WebEx because I haven't actually run one of these for a while. So Edgar's from Dev Marketing, he's in the channel right now. He's kind of like keeping everything fluid and streamlined. So I think that was enough time. I'm going to keep it smooth and interactive enough that if people join later, they'll be able to follow along. I'll be able to get everybody up to speed. So are we ready? Are we ready? I think we're ready now. So I'm going to get started. And as people kind of jump in, I will readdress things. I'm going to get some internal people in here too. So I'm going to just blast out into the R3, into our private, like kind of internal chat. I'm just going to ask a few people to come in and be like, hey, come on into the event if you feel like it. Intro to accounts is going on now. I know that there's some people here from all over the world right now. We've got some people in our session who will be coming from Japan, I believe. We have some people from EMEA, so from Europe, because of how the time zones line up. We've got some people from Singapore who promised they would come, and some celebrities, perhaps, who knows. So it's going to be really good. And I'm going to do a countdown. So I'm going to do like 10 seconds, and then I will kick it off and get right into the content. So no more waiting for any more people. Okay. So 10, 9, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So as I iterated to some of the first people into the room here, this is Intro to Corda Accounts. I'm Anthony Nixon. I'm a developer evangelist at R3. So I specialize in kind of getting new developers comfortable with our different, like our different additions to the platform itself, blockchain solutions in general, how you can integrate a DLT technology into your workflow to kind of like increase your performance, your efficiency of your company, or to drive new use cases and new business propositions into market. So this is kind of like what I focus on. And I am the kind of person who's like, when it's time to go, everything else disappears. So I'm completely 100% yours, everybody in this channel right now. You are my boss. So the first thing I say, like when I do like internal trainings or whatever, is like, if I'm not on the edge of getting fired, I'm not really doing my job. Because what I want to do is expand everybody's mind to the point where you are feeling like comfortable. It's more like a team. It's less of a webinar. It's more of a workshop. And we're going to bring this forward. So what you can do at the beginning here, I've got at @anixon604. That's my Twitter. Feel free to tweet out as we go. And I'm going to talk about Corda first, a brief introduction. So let's just get a show of hands, or not really hands, but if you saw that chat sort of like plugin of the WebEx, I would kind of like to know where everybody is in terms of their experience with blockchain and Corda. So say like a hi, or say like me, or say like Corda, if you've been using the platform for say like less than 3 months. So what this means is like you just got into Corda, you're brand new, maybe not too familiar with blockchain yet. You might have some cryptocurrency or like crypto experience background with permissionless chains, etc. But if you're brand new to Corda, say less than 3 months, just put it in the chat. Just say like hi, and I won't like. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. I'm going to do way dumber things and way sillier things from the streaming center right here. So feel free to say anything. Otherwise, we could. Oh, it might be that people are actually pretty experienced. Okay, so this is good. So people might have a general overview of Corda, so I can kind of like go quickly through that. What about like, say, 3 months to a year, etc. That middle range. Maybe you've done your first Chord app, maybe you've kind of experimented a bit, done some small projects, and now you're ready to go to the next level to bring in an SDK such as an accounts SDK. So who is in that position there? Okay, I know somebody's got to be in that position for sure. Okay, either that or everybody's experts. So I'm going to assume that it's sort of the middle ground here. And then let's just start off with what Corda is. And this, I promise you, this will be really quick, but it's just kind of like reinvigorating the wheels, getting things going again. So Corda is a permissioned, need to know blockchain technology specifically designed for business. And I'm going to start articulating, okay, more than 2 years of experience. So I'm going to start articulating a little bit, kind of like what that means in terms of, what are the differences? Why does it matter? So what it is that most of you are probably being familiar with blockchain technologies for solutions that utilize or kind of leverage the double spend property. And this is mainly in the public space, permissionless blockchains like Bitcoin or like Ethereum, etc. You will have sort of this global ledger, and you'll be able to have consensus around all of the participants network-wide, that a certain like transaction has taken place, or that a certain element or code logic or like workflow has been accomplished, and has been committed to this immutable ledger. So that's something that is been there, like in blockchain, it's like fundamental. But when we say it's designed for business, Corda kind of like realized, hey, blockchain technology isn't a particular implementation. It's not like, just proof of work, or it's not just a global distributed public ledger. It's a set of properties which can be transferred directly and into the current corporate workflow in the current enterprise environment. And what this means is that we can leverage a lot of these properties, but we have to take into account that there's certain elements of enterprise operations that need to kind of like, hold on. I think I have like this corruption. Okay, so just a little bit video issue there for a second. Okay, so we need to address certain issues in an enterprise workspace to get this into regulated markets, to get this into existing agreements and legal sort of cooperation, regulatory environments, etc. And what Corda does is by setting up a permission network with an actual onboarding process. So everybody on the network, whatever Corda network you set up, whether it's like something in a consortium base, private with your peers, or if it's something like a more mainline, like global network, like the administered Corda network, then you will be onboarded by an authority or by like network operator who will, like take in different details from you and establish a linking to a real world identity. Then you will be basically issued a certificate by a doorman that not just gives you a cryptographic key, like, so if I want to join like Bitcoin or Ethereum, like I have a pseudo anonymous key which represents everything that I do, but it's just basically not tied to anything real world. There's no enforcement and no way that I could bring that into a legal court without some like, like verbose workaround or like side agreements or whatever. But with a KYC process, we're able to kind of make sure that every actor on the network who engages in a transaction with a counterparty has an identity which can be basically tied to that real world entity and enforced in a legal arena as well. So it's basically allowing this business process to take place. In addition, this is the biggest thing, and this comes into play when we talk about accounts, is that things are need to know. So the thing is, like, if you took, maybe I have a board here. Okay, let me see if I can go back to the video because I have a board here just really quick. Show myself in floating view, change for reflection. Okay, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this because I suck with WebEx, but let's just pretend. So if you have this like, this is basically a permissionless chain or like a public ledger. You might have like a chain of transactions which could be coming from all different sort of like entities or actors participating in this. Different transactions are kind of stored in blocks. So you might have, like all these like sub transactions in here. But the thing is that these are all accessible from anywhere on the network, from the whole participation pool. And this is a little bit, tricky when we're talking about things like TPS, transaction speed, as well as things like privacy, etc. So what Corda does, completely built from scratch, based on like distributed ledger patterns and technology. What we want to do is we introduce a thing called like need to know, which means that if you have a particular transaction, that transaction from issuance um, to some sort of like finality or burn, from when it's on ledger to when it's off ledger, is actually only in view or seen by the parties that are participating or involved in that transaction. And then to offset the double spend, what we have is a notary, which is able to take a transaction proposal and see if this prior state has actually been spent before. And if it hasn't, then basically it allows this new state, which could have different participants, et cetera, to be written. And so it's completely need to know. So I apologize for the people that are absolutely new. That might be a little bit sort of like verbose and not too clear, but what you can do is we have videos on the channel, on Corda's YouTube channel, which will go over the blockchain bootcamp segment from the platform level, bringing you up to speed to accounts. But for everybody else, it's basically review. So next, I'm going to talk about the next part of our review area here, or this sort of like quick, like 10-minute getting everybody back up to speed. We're going to be talking about Chord Apps. So Chord Apps are decentralized applications which operate at the node level on Corda. So these different counterparties, et cetera, and the different entities which are tied to existing real life actors will each have nodes, a single node with their own, like certificate and key. And on top of that node, they can sort of like engage with other parties to execute business logic, which will replace real world workflows through transactions, et cetera. And those flows and those sort of like that whole situation, like the whole basically package of saying like, I want to issue into a supply chain network a crate of apples, and I want to transfer apples from supplier A to supplier B. So the definition of that state of that basket of apples, the contract or the sort of like criteria with which that state is allowed to transform or evolve, the contract, and the flow which allows the party to say, I'm supplier A, send it to supplier B, sign off, it's all good, it's all good. The flow, that whole like process is encapsulated into something called CorDapp. So the analogy here is that Corda, the platform, think of it as like iOS, it's like the operating system. And then CorDapp is the application which we are creating on top of that, which if you were on your iOS or your basic like smartphone, that would be, like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or anything else like Angry Birds or something. So that's where Chord Apps come in the discourse. And then we're going to talk about accounts. So just a little bit of a disclaimer here. This slide deck is not mine. And as usual, I kind of like went through it. I added one or two things, but you might see a surprise look on my face when I get to the next slide. That's totally fine because we're going to work through this together. Luckily, if there's anything that's unclear, I'm going to be taking questions. And also, like I said, this is going to be a two-part series, so you can continue to ping me throughout the week. And then, next session, if there's anything I didn't address as clear as I could, then we'll go back to it. So let's just do a recap right now. Just is everybody comfortable with the concept of Corda and the concept of CorDapp right now? How are we doing? We've got 25 people in here right now, so it's definitely pumping up the amplitude of participants. And I think this group is perfect because the size means we can get really interactive. So all of you, if you see the chat there, just let me know. Are you comfortable right now with Corda and Chord Apps? Are you comfortable with blockchain? Yes. Okay, that's good. That's good. Yes. Okay, if one more person says yes. Yes. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to talk about accounts. And I'll say this really seriously. Okay, accounts. What are we trying to solve here? So here's the challenge. Here's the thing. Like I said earlier, every single actor or counterparty or participant on a Corda network has been onboarded and has basically this legal real world identity, which maps to a digital certificate, which has their key or their identity on the network. But the thing is, only one identity can map to each node on the network. So this kind of like brings up some interesting challenges. Like if I'm on for instance, like a permissionless public chain, I can basically, get a client, generate a key. Okay, I got a key. Okay, boom, let's participate. Um, that's really simple. But the thing is, like with businesses, originally transforming business workflows into automated smart contract, which are decentralized, and like creating this single what you see, I see. The leveraging of that for business processes was fine, and it was really, really sort of like intuitive and simple to say like, okay, every enterprise, every sort of like company that is interacting, whether it's assurance vertical or whether it's like healthcare or whether it's energy or whatever. Well, yeah, they're all going to want to, like have absolute control and have their own node and have their own identity. But then we moved into this sort of like space where use cases and opportunities exploded. And then we get into more interesting things. So, okay, so we have these sub-agreements, or we have these agreements with people that we want to engage in formal legal contracts with, or we want to interact with, but it doesn't make sense from a practical standpoint, maybe from a legal standpoint or an integration standpoint, for them to actually deploy their own node. So then it's like, okay. So if that's the case, then how can we solve that? How can we, get different parties or get different actors onto Corda, interacting in a Corda DLT space, but like not giving them sort of like the requirement that they have to host a node, that they have to maintain a node, that they have to kind of like go through this KYC process when it's really not relevant to many of the additional like real host nodes on the network. And this is where we came to accounts. So accounts solves this problem by saying like, okay, well, a node can have a one-to-one identity, but what we want is to allow a node to have something called accounts, which will allow the participation of different sub-entities. And I've got a few slides here that will kind of throw out some use cases at you. So maybe I'm maybe I'm a service provider. I do like IT. I do IT services, or maybe I'm a like distributor or supplier, and I interact with other people within my consortium, within my realm. So like we're always like sort of trading resources, or we're trading like server time. We have some sort of like real time market. We have some some really in sync agreements, like I'm the one, I'll bring in the servers, you set up the hardware in terms of like the like demarcation point, you set up like the sort of like installations, etc. So you have all these agreements that are shuttling past at the host level, and then you're saying each one of these particular identities will have sub-participants. So here there's a small business owner. So let's fire in another one. I don't know why this guy looks the same, but we're talking about subsidiaries here. Okay, subsidiaries. So imagine that you are an umbrella company. What's your favorite chocolate bar? So more than like 60% chance that your favorite chocolate bar is a Mars bar, because Mars like owns all the other chocolate bars. I don't know if you knew this, but they could basically, Mars would be a Corda node, and Mars could have accounts which basically are synchronous or matching with particular like subsidiaries. And Johnson & Johnson, like I don't know if I like baby powder, or are they selling toothpaste, or are they selling like I don't know what they're selling this day. Like basically I buy a lot of Johnson & Johnson. So that's another sort of like use case. There's other things such as like like reinsurance, where you might be like mitigating risks over like subsidiary parties or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Trader or sub broker. So things like, I'm able to operate in this real-time market, et cetera, that's being set up. I'm also wanting to deal with digital assets, and I want to basically do wholesale trades, et cetera, et cetera. But then at the same time, I have either particular individuals underneath me, or I have, firms underneath me, which at the point in time and based on their technological infrastructure and their willingness to kind of like migrate to new technologies, et cetera, they might still want to kind of like keep things a little bit simple. And in that case, we can sort of like offload some of those services to them and allow them to participate in the Corda network. So that's like another one there. Last one here, local distribution center. I don't want to like beat the horse too hard here, but I think everybody's getting the gist with this. Are there any things in the audience, like does anybody want to kind of like wonder about their particular business vertical or about their industry, or does somebody have an idea? I'm not bad on the fly, so if you give me like anything from like chocolate production to like the like the QA checking of I don't know, like toothpicks in Asia or something, like I could probably throw out an issue or like identify some sort of like domain where accounts could take place. If not, then we're going to move on a little bit. I'll go to the next slide. So as I said before, and don't worry for all the coders out there, because we're about to hit some code too. And for the non-coders, I will keep it fresh. I will make sure to explain it through different abstractions so that everybody can understand. That's like totally my jam. So opportunities we see, small business can be onboarded, reduce cost of operation. I will get into this in the next slide, along with more use cases. So I think we covered those in the last like 3 to 4 slides. But one thing that's really excited from a value proposition or a perspective from the architectural design area, if you're thinking about implementing accounts and you're not sure if you want to or what to do, let's talk about like scaling, okay? So Chord accounts can help scale your Chord app as well. And let's see this chart. Ooh, this chart. Okay, so I'm going to explain this for everybody out there from the business side and also from the technical side. Let's talk about one of the major reasons that enterprise was so sort of like enamored with Corda right from the get-go. Because Corda was developed from the ground up, kind of like throwing away existing patterns. I mean, we're leveraging a lot of the original like fundamentals, but thinking about the particular properties we wanted to harvest from the technologies that were available at the time, as well as like, the needs of business and where we can go. Like if like the sky was a limit, like how can we like basically make this the best platform ever? And scaling was one of those things that was a primary hot topic at the time. So you have things like, Bitcoin, if you're on the Bitcoin network, depending on your protocol, et cetera, like you can be doing at a global network-wide levels, perhaps like 7 transactions per second. Ethereum, like originally with proof of work, et cetera, you're looking about like a cap around like 15 transactions per second, like at the network level. And then obviously we have all these different like mitigating technologies and patterns and like, like side chaining, et cetera, to improve that. But right out the gate, like Corda was able to scale exponentially. And what we're looking at here is a graph of a transaction per second at the node level. So not the network wide level, but the node level. And how this sort of like went together and how this played out was that we had like basically an exchange node, and the exchange node was able to approve or like process transactions using its flow state machine, blah, 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 internal structure is processing transactions of an asset versus like cash swap. So something like that, right? And then what you see here on the x-axis are the number of nodes that were participating in that particular exchange and the TPS level. So what is happening here is you can see that this line is decreasing. So as we're going up, obviously, in the number of participants in this particular transaction, due to network messaging, due to all of the overheads involved, latency, et cetera, we're getting to the point where we have this decreasing. Now, this is still exponentially, like you're nowhere near like, 15 or whatever. And if you compound this or expand this over the network level, say I have like 10 nodes and I'm hitting like, 300 transactions per second, like per node, right? Then you're already at like 3,000 TPS. Like we have only 2 counterparties. Is the diagram also correct if the flow is actually only be 2 out of 10 nodes? Like we only to counterparty. So the thing is, okay, it's a little bit going into detail, so I won't address this question too deeply because I have so much content to go through, but I'm going to post the actual link to this performance test. Let me just make a note of it here. So I'll post the link to this performance test. This obviously you can see that we have a transaction between two nodes and an exchange node. So there is a little bit more of an overhead there. So if you were just going like straight one-to-one, it wouldn't really be like an exchange node and one party. So you would actually be going even faster. But the point I want to get to with this technical blah, blah, blah of TPS is, think about it. We're still talking at the network level of an exchange of transactions between different like hosted, like different like physical nodes, right? So accounts not only allows you to interact node to node, but you can also interact node to account, account to account, account on this node to this node. So you have this whole like combination, and you're getting into this subset, you're getting into this series of transactions which can exponentially scale, because if you eliminate the overhead of actually having to encrypt and send like the transaction through the network, and you're actually just running that transaction between accounts on the same node, you're basically being limited by the you're being limited by the flow state machine to the most part, like internally, and then you're basically able to scale at a level that you probably haven't seen before. So it's absolutely ridiculous. So I hope this isn't like too technical, but explain it like I'm 5, like cha-ching, like too much power, big returns, like just yeah, sell it to your business guy or your IT lead, who knows. Now let's talk a little bit about like more technical architectural details, because this is going to lead into the code walkthrough. This is going to lead into the second section that will run in 2 weeks. And any questions along the way, feel free to throw them in here. So this here, representing a Corda account, the first thing that we need to know is this important word, logical. So the first thing that is kind of like, I guess people forget, and it's sort of hard to explain, is we're so used to operating sort of like on the network level that when we introduce an account, which is actually like mid-stack, so accounts operates, it's a set of Chord apps. Like basically accounts, if you go to the repository, you'll see that it's implemented at the node level as a Chord app itself. But what this Chord app does, and I'll also explain like why we made that design decision. What this Chord app does is it allows you to keep in sync with other parties, as well as all of your entities on your node, in terms of like matching an external identity, so an actor in the real world, or an actor that you've kind of vetted or you have an agreement with, to an identity or an account that is relevant or like stored as a state on your node. So basically, for every client that I have, so everybody that I am creating an account for, will issue something called an account info state, and we'll look into that later. And the account info state will be in my vault. It'll be something that I can access at any time. So there's like a couple properties here that make this really cool. So number one, by bringing it away from the network level and into a Chord app, what we're able to accomplish is to give this like flexibility and absolute freedom for individual actors on a Corda network to determine their own sort of like participation and their own sort of need for this type of feature. So that's one thing. I can be using accounts fully as Anthony's node, as Anthony's enterprise, and like XYZ, Bob's farming supply across the way, just has no need. Like they just don't want to, like have this sort of like extra feature. They don't want to install anything or make any changes, and we don't have to change anything. They're just totally fine like that. The thing is, like, if I'm using accounts now, that means that all of my clients, all of my customers, all of my subsidiaries are also private to me. Like nobody knows they exist. So this is all the cool thing. We have something called a share an account flow, which means that before the time that I pull the trigger and say like, here, let's do business. Like, my customer wants to do an exchange with your customer, or my customer wants to buy your service or whatever. Before that actual critical moment of tipping happens, this person doesn't exist in the eyes of, like the counterparties of the other people on the network. It's when I choose, it's when I have the intent to get others involved, that this sort of like veil is lifted and we're able to kind of have this, a sharing, the sharing of identities. So that's the thing about accounts. So I think the key takeaway here is, number one, that the accounts are something that are basically taken care of at the node level. They're organized, they're enforced at the node level through the Chord app. Number two is that the external identities in the accounts do not have presence on the network. If Corda has something called a network map cache, which is able to basically derive all of the well-known identities and digital certificates on it. These are only nodes. Accounts do not have these. So there's also this area of trust where the external identities or the accounts under you will have to trust you. But if you're in business, I mean, that's already kind of like a prefix or something that we've already said. Logical subvaults means related to the fact that they're trusting you. Logical subvaults means that the node operator or the host of the account has an overall godlike view of the vault. The accounts are logically separated so that when I am accessing the data of a particular account, either to run a transaction or to query, etc., I have to implement logic and I have to choose to basically query or access that slice. So it's fully possible, if you don't design the Chord app right, etc., that you could kind of like mix up, or you could take information from different subvaults or different slices as a host. So this is where Chord app design comes in, and this is where you're going to learn a lot about accounts and how to mitigate this. But that's the thing to know. This has many advantages and obviously many things that you have to kind of look out for in the way. So here's a pictorial representation of just what I said here. We've got two accounts and we've got no accounts. So this would be sort of like host level transactions signed by the party, by the host legal identity, by the host public key. And these would be accounts that were engaged in with the account party. So I'll go into classes as well as how you represent, because if you're Corda faithful, then you know that these particular states here that are at the host level are accessed and sort of like interacted with through the party, through the party class. And these ones here, we're using something called anonymous party. But these anonymous parties, these particular entities, each key that is associated with it and used to sign a transaction will map to a unique identifier of the account. So this is how that sort of like logical separation works, etc. So how's everybody doing so far? I hope this isn't too verbose. Do we have any questions or concerns, or is anybody getting lost? Let me know. Are you having fun? I mean, as much fun as we can have. I'll try to liven it up a little bit more. Okay. So I think I went over this already. Like I said, slides, I probably should have prepped up a little bit more and known a little bit more of the slides, but I went over this particular aspect already. Accounts are not Corda identities per se, and then vault isolation is not supported. So physical, different, specific different physical vaults for accounts is not supported. What we have here is logical separations. And these are the transaction types that I was talking about in terms of when we were talking about scaling and the different ways that things can go about. So we have the account to node transaction. We have not highlighted here, but we have the node to node. This is what you're traditionally used to. And then we have the account to account transactions cross node. And then we have account to account in node. So use cases, I don't know why this slide is over here, but we went over this briefly. Now, for the coders out there, I'm about to get into the coding, but for the rest of you, it's still going to be fun, so don't worry, and I'll explain. I think it's important that everybody, even if you're a business stakeholder and not necessarily a coder, if you understand to some degree how the code works. It's really going to help out in terms of planning and project managing. So before I go into this, are there any questions about sort of this idea of accounts being logical partitions, accounts being identities which are managed and hosted at the node level through the accounts mid layer? And any questions about the different types of transactions? So hit it up in the chat. Are there any questions right now? I'll be free to answer. Otherwise, we'll go into some code. Okay, so I don't see any questions yet. Let's go. So code, friendly, fast, and flowing. This is what everybody's probably here to see, is how does this work from a sort of like operational level when you're a developer, as a developer. This is what I like to see, this is what I'm interested in. So this is the logical flow of an account process. And what we have here on the left here is prior to the flow, we want to create an account. So initial onboarding of your particular sub-entity or the particular person that you want to engage with at the account level. This is very similar to an issuance. Like I said, accounts are represented by a state on Ledger. So imagine like you have your digital asset and you're representing classic guitars. You would do your sort of create classic guitar. So that's basically create an account. So putting in the properties there. Then we're sharing to a counterparty. So like I said, this is something that has to be explicitly unveiled to counterparty in order to access this particular sub-entity and run a transaction with if you're going like node to node. So we have flows to do that. Then within your particular flow, which is executing that transaction, which is evolving the state with the participants being like account 1, account 2, etc. Here's where it gets a little bit unique. So you want to request a new key. And the reason that this is important is that the accounts, they're basically handled by the identity manager in terms of mapping public keys to unique IDs, to unique account identifiers. Now, to make sure that the accounts keep their integrity and are flexible to the point of being able to, like transfer an account between different nodes, or, like being able to isolate particular queries of a transaction, etc. To keep things really robust, and there's documentation why it's important. You want to actually, best practice, generate a new key. And don't worry, it'll map to the same ID. You'll be able to generate a new key. Then you request a new key from the counterparty. So if the counterparty account, etc., basically has an account that you're dealing with, you request a new key. Set the account keys as state participants. This is a really cool thing about Corda. You're used to parties, etc., if you've done any of the boot camps. So the party is basically a wrapper for a digital certificate, for like a Corda X500 name, which is their identity, like in basically a form that's readable, understandable, etc., and their public key. Well, the participants, if you look at the actual function, is actually one layer up. So it's an abstract party. So the thing is that accounts, even though they're not well-defined identities that we would encapsulate in party, they are held in an anonymous party, which is basically synonymous with an abstract party, and we can add them as participants. So operationally at the state level, in terms of adding participants to transactions, nothing changes other than some small tweaks on how you're storing these participants in the state if you're doing so. So self signs the transaction with account key. So when you're doing the signing of the transaction, either at your level, or if you're like collecting signatures or whatever, you'll see this in code. What we'll do is that we will sign with, when we add in the required signatures, we can sign using our API. So as a host node, I can sign using my service hub on behalf of an account. So I can put in the account key as a signer when I do the sign in initial transactions through the service hub API, and then click signature target. We'll see this in code. This is really cool. Data retrieval, some small tweaks. So this code may be available, and then we can talk about it. And I'm going to walk you through all the code to make sure that you understand it. So we have 15 minutes where we're going to go through the actual code, and I'm going to step through it with you and start explaining things. And let me know how I'm doing. Like, is everybody feeling comfortable? My main goal here is to make sure that everybody's getting value and benefit out of this, no matter what your level is. So I apologize if I go too deep here or if I'm too shallow somewhere else. Just let me know. Go into the chat and we can have discussions later, etc. So let's go into a demo. I'm going to open up IntelliJ. Let me just switch my share. Give me like 10 seconds here. Share application. Just want to get my font up. Cancel. Okay, let me tell a joke while I'm getting my font sizing up here. And I don't really have one. Does anybody have a joke? Put it in the chat there. This is my favorite part, like just showing code, going through things. I will stay around 5 minutes later than this schedule, just to make sure that people are comfortable to chat with anybody. And then, like I said, I'll jump in for office hours, etc. So I hope this will be good. So does everybody see IntelliJ right now? Just somebody put in the chat if you can see this. I'm just hoping everybody can see. Yes, okay, perfect. I'm glad everybody can see this. I see that a couple of people dropped off. They weren't coders probably, but maybe they'll come back, and I hope to make sure that for those that are staying, that everybody gets to understand this. I jumped into a flow right away, but let's go into an interface first. I want to show something called account info. Account info. Okay, so what we have here is account info. And let me just get, oh my gosh, I'm going through a virtual machine. I can't even get this bigger. Can everybody see these properties? I hope that's all there is and everybody can see. It's not that, okay, good. So what this is here, I promised you all that different accounts would be stored as states on your particular host node. And it's as simple as this. Look at what we have here. We've got an account info. And what it has is 3 properties: a name, a host, and an identifier. So a couple things right off the bat for those Corda curious, the people out there, is that this particular class is extending from, it's basically implementing linear state, which is enforcing this unique identifier, which means that this particular instance of an account, this representation, will evolve linearly. It can never have duplicate or two copies at the same time throughout its life cycle. Now, the name and the host have to be unique at the, the host obviously has to be unique because it's mapping to the host. The name has to be unique at the host level, so at this particular node, but it's totally fine for a name to be a Bob Jones to exist on my node and a Bob Jones to exist on one of my counterparties' host nodes on the network. That's totally fine because we don't need that uniqueness. The uniqueness at the network level can obviously be enforced. Number one, the UUID is confirmed like probabilistically unique at a network level, as well as the name plus the host, so different combinations. And every public key that's generated will also resolve back to the private key that the host that created that particular key. So there's many ways to enforce this uniqueness when doing a network transaction. So this is basically how we're going to be creating accounts. And then the next thing that I want to show everybody is the account management service. Where am I here? Key management account service. So this is going to be an API which you're able to access through your Service Hub or through your flows to do particular operations, do various things when you're coding related to managing and interacting with your particular accounts. So we have things such as listing all of your accounts, like quick queries. What are all the accounts or subsidiaries that I'm hosting right now, that I'm managing? You're able to throw in sort of like another host. So if somebody has been sharing accounts with you and you want to know like what are the accounts related to this particular counterparty, you can derive those. And then we have things such as creating, retrieving keys, et cetera, gathering the ID. So basically querying things and operating on those account info states. So this is not that complicated, because once you master these two particular elements, there's so much that you can do. Now, what I'll do is I'll start walking through these particular flows that are set up in this demo. We only have 9 minutes left, so I don't think I'm going to be able to run this demo, but it's basically baked into this particular sample, which I'll post. And then you can go in there, run it right after this session. And if you have any questions, go on Slack, slack.corda.net, into the general, the Bootcamp channel, and ask me, and I'll get you up and running. So let's talk about how you interact with this in code. So right here is something that was put in as a create and share account flow for demo purposes. I haven't actually seen this before, but it's simple enough that we can see what's going on here. So what's happening is that we're accessing this subflow called create account. And create account is basically part of it's part of the accounts library. And if we jump into it, we can see that basically it's going to return, hold on, I hope you all saw that. This subflow here will return a state ref to the account info that was generated and placed on your ledger. So this is going to give us access to it. And then this one here is sharing the account information with a particular party. So this is very synonymous, just sort of like wrapping up the functionality which we talked about earlier. If you want to kind of like derive these particular functions right from these, but you don't have to access it through here. You can also access it within your top level flow by calling the account services, which I will show you right. Where do we have one here? Where are we grabbing an account services? Probably in a query. Get account service. Okay, so here we're getting an account service for this particular node, and this is basically going at the top level. You can basically go directly to the dependency jars, or you can the dependency package class, or you can go through the account service API to do these different functionalities. I want to basically, after create, I want to go and issue this token flow. So this is going back to that slide that I showed, where I showed you that I created and I shared. So that first segment there was the creation and sharing. Let's see if we see that here. Okay, so going back here. So prior to initiate flow, you all see this. We did the create counterparty. Then in a flow, we want to do a particular thing. And what we're doing here is a token issuance. And this token issuance is going to basically be jamming up and encapsulating, implementing all of these functionalities in that mid layer of the process that we showed. So we're going to request a key. Here you see we're running subflows, which are requesting keys for account. And then after that, we're building the transaction with the small adjustments that we made related to handling the accounts. So when we're doing this, you can see that some of the things that are slightly different that I'm going to point out is after we've done things such as requesting new keys, etc., then we have to do some small other adjustments, such as adding the accounts key to the particular command to make sure that we're saying this is going to be a required signer, or this signature is going to be included in the transaction. And then, like I said, when you're self-signing, so when you're signing this transaction, if the issuer account is hosted on the initiating node, then you can do basically assigned through your own Service Hub API to grab the owning key associated with that account, which will be tied in any like further down the line query, we can sign on behalf. So we're basically, our host node is using the issuer's account key. So for the collect signatures flow, we're doing a similar thing as we would with regular parties, except we are able to collect signatures on accounts instead of just like at the party level. So this is something to do with the middle layer of the slide that we showed earlier. And then finally, we have things like data retrieval. So let me see if I can, in 4 minutes, derive where this is going in, where this is happening. Where do I want to retrieve this? Oh, query by account. Okay, so here's the data retrieval flows that's happening. And this is basically querying by account, the things that we have stored in that particular logical subpartition. So I challenge you all and I encourage you all to download this sample. This is the Bootcamp Chord app. And then you have to check out the branch called Bootcamp for accounts. So it's going to be, I'm putting in the chat right now. So it's GitHub, and we'll send out an email with all these relative links too. Bootcamp CorDapp branch for accounts. Okay, so that's in the chat. And this is basically teaching you how to query based on the identities of the accounts on your local host. So on the parent node, you're able to figure out either by UUID or by querying the account service APIs, what are the particular states that are relative to this particular account. And this is important because, like I said, the accounts are only logically partitioned. So you want to make sure that you're grabbing the right data at the right time. So I only have 3 more minutes, but what I want to do for 3 more minutes is take on any questions. And I want to also get some of your feedback because, like I said, I'm kind of a substitute today, and I want to make sure that I get it better for next time. And I want to make sure that when everybody's back in 2 weeks, that I can kind of attack this from multimodality and kind of make sure that when we go into code, which will go very deep into code in the next section, in terms of like live coding, so you have me on the spot, sort of like jamming things out. I want to make sure that everything is prepped for that. So are there any questions? Anybody in the chat have anything to say? Questions, feedback, comments? Did you like it? Was it okay? Are you confused? Is there anything that we can talk about further? So I'll be here for like how an account knows that other accounts exist. So that's the greatest question ever. So like I said earlier, and I'll basically post a slide deck as well, but the way that the accounts know is that we share it with them. So there's 2 different ways that you can do this. You can share an account. So if you look at this create and share account flow, there's a subflow here, which has as an argument or as the parameters is the account that is going to be shared as well as the party that you want to share to, which can also be a list. So this means that I am explicitly sending this account information beforehand or like in sync, like basically in the workflow, just one stage before we start building the transaction and start agreeing on things, I'm going to explicitly send that account information. On the other hand, there's flows and methods for saying like, can you send me an account? Like, I know this guy exists, or this is his identifier, or this is who I'm looking for. And then you can program into your responder. So how your node handles that request, you can say like, okay, if you give me this, I'll send you this account automatically. So everything's automatically sort of like you can script it in to be completely synchronous at all times. So that's how accounts know that other accounts exist. Is there also, okay. And if you're also talking about like, the other thing I want to show, I guess, which is important to understanding things in general, is let's go to the state for a second. So when you're operating through transactions and you're operating through Corda, we have this idea, we've always had this idea of, like parties. So if you do the initial boot camps or initial coding sessions, you always be like party, party, party. Well, yes, but party is actually an abstract party at its core. So if I went into party, I would see that party is actually implementing abstract party. So it's creating an implementation of that. And the same with what we changed here. So when you're using accounts with states, you basically are leveraging the confidential identities framework or like package in order to do the linking between the public keys and the UUIDs. And this is allowing you to leverage something called anonymous party. An anonymous party, is also an abstract party. So this is why everything works, nothing breaks. Everything's like still legit, cool, because when we're operating in terms of actually achieving finality, in terms of doing things between parties, we can operate at this abstract party layer. So is this approach same as sync identity flow? Yes. So sync identity flow, I will post that in the documentation as well. But these are all related to basically synchronizing the mappings between what I know with a particular party and what I associate with them in my identity managers, and then what somebody else who maybe also needs to interact with. Basically, we need to have the same view of the world when it comes to who's involved in a transaction for us to, do things meaningfully. And these will go over deep in 2 weeks. So yeah, that will be one of the key things. We'll do sync identity flows, and we'll do a lot of other fun code things. So let's see here. So an account is hidden or anonymous until I've spent the account information to another node. Is it possible to publish account like map source? Okay, so you don't actually have to spend per se. So the when you say like account is hidden or anonymous, send, is it possible to publish? Oh, you said sent. Okay. So yes. So nobody else will ever know that you created that account. 100%. And this is one of the requirements that anybody would want, sort of like with this type of functionality. You have to send it to them either through directing that flow or having a response to a request. So you can do this. Publish all accounts publicly, you could totally do this. So this is the greatest thing about Corda, which I love, the fact that it's privacy first. So the thing is, if you go global first, and everybody knows everybody, then you're like chipping away for all of eternity, trying to figure out how to obfuscate or create privacy there. But when you start with privacy, like if I'm private and we're buds, we can go as public as we want. Everything after that is like completely, up to us. And that's where the flexibility is. So if I want to publish all my accounts publicly, boom, no problem. I can basically give me the network map and just broadcast it all out. So I can do something like do a share account flow, but instead of just targeting one party, I can do something like piggyback every party. So I can if you look at adding observers to states or whatever, which is one of the patterns of Corda, you can do things like when you have your finality flow, beyond the participants, you can also just toss in observers or other parties that will receive that transaction or receive that state. So there's so many ways to broadcast and go global, like Gossip Protocol, in terms of through the flow implementation. And if you want to chat offline about methods or patterns for that, more than happy, because it's super cool. So yeah, I'm going to let everybody go in 1 minute. Are there any final questions? I'm here all week, literally, because I live here. It's my house. So is there any API for getting peer accounts, as we have one for getting peer node information? Yeah, so the starting point for APIs, where did I put that? Is there any API for getting peer accounts? There's a bunch of requesters. I'm going to post you samples, actually. I can't remember where I had that. I haven't actually run this training session, so I'm kind of a little bit rusty. I've been doing other things. I'm going to hit you up with it, and we'll go over that. I just have to find the code. But this is really easy. Trust me, this is not that hard. So for getting peer accounts, we're going back to sort of that requesting, the requesting information. So request from host, we can do this in code quite easily. It's not a problem. There's a little bit of sort of boilerplating that you kind of we'll have to implement when you're working with any of these APIs. But section 2 in 2 weeks, I'm going to live code that for you, and we'll go over this. So all you have to know to wrap up, I guess I went overtime, is number 1, logical partitions. Number 2, anybody that you need that you are operating with and doesn't have, like the resources, or it doesn't make sense for them to go full on deployment into Corda network with a host node, you can host them as an account. And then basically when you're interoperating with or doing transactions across the network, we have the account service API, and we have the whole accounts the whole accounts SDK. If you go to the GitHub, you'll see all of the different tooling and utilities that we have provided there. And then we're going to go over that in 2 weeks. Yeah, that's like what it is. I don't want to keep anybody overtime. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to jump into the Slack now to do office hours. I'm 6 minutes late. If you have any questions, hop in there, slack.corda.net. Tweet me at anixon604. And don't forget to sign up for the session, which will be running 2 weeks from now. I'll be hosting that as well. And I'm going to take feedback and kind of like go over what happened with this session. And so I'll be bringing my A game with some live coding, and we'll just go from there. And I want everybody to feel comfortable and happy with Corda. Welcome to the family. If you're new to Corda, yeah, I'll guide you on this journey. So let's go for it. I'll see you in 2 weeks, or I'll see you in the Slack. Thank you. Thanks for coming.